Hey, Soraya, how you doing?
All right, how you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing great. It's too bad that we can't do any traveling because I would love to go to Australia right now.
You know, Australia sounds like a pretty awesome place to be right now, especially when it's like a 225 degrees in the San Fernando Valley. I don't know how it is in
Yeah,
Temecula, but it should be a little cooler down under, right?
I would hope so. I don't know.
Well, if we can't travel, maybe we've got the next best thing.
What's that?
Talking to Dave Faulkner from the Hoodoo Gurus.
All right. Yes,
How about that?
that is awesome. I have uh some very fond memories of Hoodoo Gurus and in different points of my life. So I'm very excited to get to talk to him. And
Um,
Hoodoo Gurus have a new single out, so we
Yeah, it's called Hung Out to Dry, but it's not the only single they've released. They released one last year, late last year, called Answered Prayers. So could this be the beginning of maybe talk about a new album, new tour? I don't know.
we need
Let's
to
talk
find
to,
out.
I think we need to get started.
All
I'm
right,
excited. Let's go.
let's do it. Down under we go.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Dave Faulkner. This is Jeff and Soraya from Paisley Stage, Raspberry and Rhyme. How are you doing today?
Hi, Jeff. Hi, Soraya.
Good
Hey,
morning.
Hey, good morning to you.
We were wondering how Friday night's going to be because we're not quite there yet. And since you got a jump start on us,
I can tell you it's very quiet in Bondi Beach because I stayed home and went to sleep quite early.
oh, boy. Okay. Well, so it's going to be a quiet Friday night. All right.
I can show you what Saturday morning looks like. This is pretty good.
All right.
And this is Saturday morning in Bondi Beach. There we go. Very pretty, huh?
oh, right now we can't see for some reason.
Oh, really?
No.
Wonder what that's about. Oh, that's strange. You can't see me?
No.
How peculiar.
But we can hear you quite fine.
Oh, let me
Perfect.
just see. Let me just see. Oh, my video's not on. That's why. Here we go.
Oh, there
Excuse
we go.
me.
Cheers.
Now I'll show you. This is Bondi
Oh, look at that.
Beach.
Wow.
Look at that.
It's a lovely.
Look what we have to look forward to.
It's a lovely, winter day. But it's a sunny day, and I've been out for my morning walk and feeling pretty good.
Well, we
Excellent.
have lots of questions for you.
Sure. Are you
So
right with you? I just sit back down and plug in.
beautiful.
Done. Great. Let's go.
Well, we wanted to start out asking about this new song, this new video, Hung Out to Dry, which
Yes.
people over here in the US, let me tell you, very cheeky, very good video, but the song is fantastic.
Thank
And
you very much.
we wanted to know, first of all, for our listeners, the release was July the 24th, so it's brand spanking new. And we wanted to ask, what was the inspiration for this song?
Well, I'm a bit of a science fan, so as soon as I heard about the SARS-CoV-2 virus, at the end, well, pretty much I heard about it in early January, and I was very alarmed because I'd already been aware of the original SARS and MERS and how close we came to having a serious pandemic then. So I was quite alert to the risk, and then, of course, unfortunately, my worst fears were realised. And then Australia, we almost fumbled the ball a little bit early on in March. We looked like we might not, the Prime Minister, that's our top leader. He was going to make the lockdown rules be that 500 people could still gather, which was just crazy because 500 is way too many. So that changed within a matter of days. So they got it down, and we flattened the curve and all those things. And we're still fighting it. And there's been an outbreak recently in Melbourne that's very, very alarming. But by and large, they did a very good job in keeping a lid on this pandemic. And then to watch what was happening in the US and how it was turned into a political football, and all these different mixed messages about masks being a restraint of liberty, and how that's, if you believe in following a certain line of politics, you would be against masks. to me, this was just insane. And I got to blame the leaders for that. And so, you know, I was very angry at the Trump administration and for all the needless pain and death that it's caused just to try to be a political opportunist.
Yeah, absolutely. We're right there with you. Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, man, it's horrible. You're living there. I've got friends as well. You know, I've got friends in Los Angeles and New York and Louisiana, and all of them, they're at risk, you know, for no I mean, obviously everyone's at risk. I'm at risk, but, you know, you've got to try and, you know, manage this as best you can. And that's what a politician's for. I mean, you know, that's what why we have them, to manage these sorts of crises and do what's necessary. But instead, it's been the exact opposite. You've had an actual person who's destroying everything. And anyway, so
Absolutely.
yes, I was angry at this administration. I wrote the song about that. But at the same time, I'm not the sort of writer that wants to. I mean, I just did it then, standing up on a hobby hall, you know, my soapbox and sort of preaching about my politics or what I think about someone else's. But as a songwriter, I don't really like to do that. So I prefer to sort of put it on a more personal level, as in I just dislike this person, and it's an I hate you song. So it's much more direct rather than me sort of, you know, calling out policies and being kind of, you know, quite rational in a way. I was the opposite of that. I'm passionate and angry, and it's a personal beef I have with this man.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we really appreciate the song. The song itself, apart from the message, the video, we really, really like the song. We're longtime Hoodoo Gurus fans, so this is very exciting for us.
Thank you.
We wanted to know about the band members that played on this particular song. So we know that you released Answered Prayers in December of 2019, and this is the second single that you've released in the last 6, 7, 8 months. Can you tell us about the lineup? Because I know a couple of the guys, you included, and Brad, or from the played on the debut. Can you tell us about the lineup that played on?
Well, I'll just give you a quick potted history of the band's, you know, whole history. So when we first formed, which was 1981, which is crazy because next year's our 40th anniversary.
Wow.
So that lineup only lasted for about 18 months, and we only played for about 10 months. Our first performance was actually September 81, and we probably stopped playing together, you know, because 2 guys left. That was Kimball and Rod. They were the ones that founded the band with me. And so it's James Baker, the drummer on that lineup, and myself continued on, and we were called Le Hoodoo Gurus then. So we dropped the Le. We had released one independent single, the song Leilani, but that was all. And then Brad Shepard and Clyde Bramley joined. And Brad Shepard is still in the band today. That was 1982. Clyde Bramley played bass. We didn't have a bass guitar before that. So that was a little musical change as well. That lineup recorded the first album, and then we changed drummers to Mark Kingsmill. And Mark joined in 84, and he recorded on Marsley's guitars forward up to virtually, you know, that's right, there we go, to very recently. You know, Mark retired. Actually, he was sort of shaping to retire for a long time, probably for about 10 years, but we didn't quite know it. But it became obvious the last, you know, 5 years, definitely. And he actually retired 3 years ago. But then, so we had Nick Reith join us for a little while, about, 10 months, 12 months. And then Mark came back because he did some renovations on his house and it cost him more money than he expected. So he thought, and also he kind of missed playing again, you know, having all those years in the band and sort of resenting it when he left because he was saying, you know, I'm sick of this. I don't want to do this anymore. But when he went away, he was like, well, gee, I miss it now. So he came back for a while, for about 10 months again. And then he once again went, no, I've really got to quit. That's it. I'm done with music. So he retired. He doesn't play drums anymore. And so we got Nick Reith back in again. And the second time was the charm, really, because the first time we weren't certain that Nick was going to work out. It was, you know, such a shock to us changing drummers, you know, after all those years with Mark. And he is an extraordinary drummer, Mark, and, you know, quite unique. So, you know, we found it quite difficult. But we were ready for it, actually, by the time that Nick rejoined. And then also Nick had kind of, you know, done some things to kind of make it more like I liked it. And, you know, for whatever reason, it just seems to have really gelled. And I'm really excited now what we're doing. So, you know, I think Answered Prayers and Hung Out to Dry give a good indication that there is some, you know, real vitality there, that's you know, it's not just us trying to live up to past glories. We're just doing our own thing now. That's, creating a new legacy. I should have mentioned that actually we changed bass players in 1988. So Rick Grossman, so Clyde Bramley played on the first 3 albums, and then Rick Grossman replaced him. And so Rick's been there ever since. So it's Brad and Rick and I since 1988, the 3 of us, with a change of drummers in the last 18 months. But, prior to that, Brad joined in 82. So it's, we haven't had that much, real, churn, you would say, in members. It's been pretty consistent, apart from the very first lineup that kind of exploded out quite quickly, into 2 members leaving.
Right. And I did want to mention for our listeners that Rick was a member of the Divinals, which had made a little bit of a stir in the US too. So
yeah, Rick was in the Divinals for very early part of their career, and and played on Pleasure and Pain, and so he was he's quite a significant part of his career as Divinals, and he was very to Lee Drayton, who played in the Divinals at the end, and Rick spent a lot of time visiting Chrissy when she was unwell in New York. So that we have a long time association with them. And Rick's, we got, of course, we have lots of musical friends all over the world, really. But Rick's history was quite, lengthy. We all have our own backgrounds, I as well. So yeah.
Yeah, we wanted to get into a little bit of that in a little bit later.
Okay.
For sure. But I think, we can't let the opportunity pass by. So you've given us 2 singles. Dare we ask, is there an album coming? Because we also know that some tour dates have been rescheduled for 2021 here in the US. So tell us.
Yes. 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 We really are aiming at an album. We've got songs that we've been rehearsing prior to the lockdown, actually. So what happened was we started rehearsing in February, just as the pandemic started really kicking in, I guess, around the world. And we had straight away pretty much 2 songs popped out that we just thought, well, gee, they sound like singles to us. We'd done the Answered Prayers thing in December, but this was like, let's go on to the next thing and start working towards an album. And all these songs started coming quite quickly. It was really great. And unfortunately, we had to kind of pull the pin as soon as, we're kind of getting started. And we had recording dates booked in May, but we had to cancel those because of the lockdown and just dealing with that crisis. But as we flattened the curve, as I say, in Australia, about 8 weeks ago, we started to think, well, perhaps we can, think about getting together again, because we hadn't seen each other for 2 months, apart from via Zoom. So we decided we could trust each other. We knew we'd all been very safe, and we found a rehearsal studio that allowed us to just hire one room and keep it for our gear exclusively and not have other people use it. And that made us feel more safe as well. And then we, went to the studio and we did some recording. And so our original idea was 2 singles with a B-side, but Hung Out to Dry came out so well in rehearsal. We pretty much, before even recording, we decided, well, this is probably going to be, let's just release it as a standalone track, because it's a rock song and, we're not playing live and we are a rock band. So it's nice to have something that kind of shows that side of the band's character as well. And the song, for a lot of reasons was kind of, I thought it was fresh sounding and timely. So, musically timely, lyrically timely as well. So it just seemed like the natural thing to do. But that means we've got 2 more singles ready to go. And in fact, we're shooting a video in 2 weeks' time for the next single.
Wow.
We're hearing the mixes, or I've just got a mix today from Ed Stasian, who's been mixing our stuff. So, we're just deciding on which is is that the final mix, or do we want any more slight changes? And then we'll be getting it mastered next week, sending it off to get pressed. So it'll be a vinyl single this time. So that's why we've got to have so much advance warning, because it takes a couple of months to get it pressed in Europe, because there's no pressing plants in Australia anymore. So that's what's happening. And Hung Out to Dry will still be on that single. So it'll be like a double A side in our mind, maybe. So that's going to be happening. And then there's the following single is going to probably come out early next year.
Okay.
So we're thinking October for this one, and then say January, or even maybe as late as March. We're not sure. We'll just figure it out. But that's we've already got a B-side planned for that one. That is in fact a track we had recorded and mixed and never used. And actually, it's a really cool song, and it's kind of funny how it fits with this song that we've just recorded. even though it was recorded a long time ago. It was actually from the Max Shower sessions. And it was completely finished, mixed, just the last minute decided, let's not put that one on the album, let's choose this one. And so that's what happened. And the song stylistically didn't really fit with Max Shower anyway. So it kind of works for what this other song is going to be. So that's what's happening there. And then, of course, we're going to think, we're, as I said, we've got a little bit of a scare again with COVID-19. So we're going to maybe just let things settle a bit longer, and then maybe in October we'll just have a look and see whether we want to start rehearsing again and getting ready to record. There's talk of playing some shows in January in Australia. We hope that happens, outdoor shows. But again, it's so hard to tell at this point. But if that happened, then the idea would be to rehearse new songs, play these shows, and then go into the studio straight after that and record the new material. So that we'd be like match fit from playing lots of shows, as well as, have these new songs kind of settled in.
Excellent. This sounds very exciting, Soraya. Do you hear this?
Cool.
And
well, the next song, by the way, I mean, it's back to our pop side. So I'll just say that. I'd say power pop is a very good summation of what it is. So it's probably different to anything we've done before, even though it's, we've always had that kind of melodic and, up tempo, the upbeat thing. But it's even more in some ways, more like that than we've ever done.
Wow. And Dave, I wanted to jump back a little bit. You mentioned Ed Stasium.
Yes.
So I'm excited to hear that he's working on it, because we really loved the work that he did on the most recent Long Riders album. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No,
band.
I didn't hear it. No.
Yeah. So that's he worked on that, and that's one of the albums that we focused on our podcast, and he did an amazing job with them. So I'm glad to hear that you guys are working with Ed.
Yeah, well, that's our third experience with Ed, because he of course mixed Kinky, and then he produced Crank. So it's actually our fourth experience, because he also mixed Purity of Essence, the last album we did.
Wow.
So yes, we've had a long association with Ed, and he saved Purity of Essence actually, because we did a mix first in Australia and we weren't happy, and we just thought, let's just ask Ed, and straight away the songs started sounding as we imagined they should, and it was just perfect. So that's why we're keen to keep that going.
Excellent. So I did want to talk a little bit about the possibility of touring. I know that things are up in the air. I was planning on seeing you guys on October 28th of this year in a place called the Belly Up in Solana Beach near San Diego.
Well, that's been rescheduled, as you know.
Yeah, September 12th is my understanding of 2021.
It's a Monday. No, 13th. The 13th, Monday.
Okay.
The third. Yeah, it's a Monday. It was originally a mix-up.
Okay.
They had it wrong on their site, but actually it's Monday the 13th.
Okay, and that's next year, the 2021. So
yes, yeah. I know it seems like so far away, but it's already a few months since we started doing this, and it's it's getting closer and closer. So we just hope that everything will be completely normal by then.
Oh, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys then.
Thank you.
Before we move away from Hung Out to Dry, we wanted to go back to the video, if you don't mind talking about the video for this.
Sure.
The first thing that jumped out for me is Dylan's Subterranean Homesick Blues with the
yes.
of the cards. Yeah, so I imagine that Dylan had an impact on your life.
Oh, completely, of course, on all of us. Even people that don't know they've been impacted by Dylan have been. He changed music, really.
Absolutely.
But specifically in that video, it was a bit cheeky. Because it's been copied a lot. I think there was even an MTV promotion years ago that had copied that clip. So it's a bit of an old chestnut, and maybe a bit boring to be doing that. But for us, it was really a matter of expediency. Given I'd written this song, and it was kind of written as a "I hate you" song aimed at someone. I'm talking to you, Donald Trump. I'm talking to you. So I didn't want people to be confused that maybe I was talking about an ex-lover or someone down the street. Even though I think there's some quite specific references in the lyrics, I just wanted to make it quite clear. So that was my idea, was to, let's do a lyric video first, which is that thing where you just have this, the words flashing over the screen while the music plays on YouTube, because I wanted people to really see what the lyrics were. But then I thought, that's kind of not that cheap to do, and maybe we could just as easily do something like that Dylan video, which is cheap to do, with his cards, and also at the same time I was able to in some points explain the lyrics a little bit on the cards. Like, for example, when I say you're a disease, now I have the words COVID-19 up there, just spell it out, exactly what I'm referring to. And so so I got the chance to play with the context, with the text a little bit, and also to refer back to Dylan. I put a couple of cards that were literally recreations of the cards Dylan held up, including Fail and Dig Yourself. They were the two big ones, I think. So, it's just things like that to, for us, we're fans of music history, and so to pay tribute to Dylan and to bring it forward into another use, I think was kind of nice. And then, of course, the song has, play out a bit of a rave up. And I thought, I can't just stand there holding up cards or just doing nothing. So I had the idea of Putin turning up, because I saw these Halloween masks. When I looked up the Trump Halloween mask, there was a Putin one right next to it. Oh, funny gosh. That way.
Interesting.
On the same website. So I thought, well, let's have Putin turn up, and of course in a golf cart, because that's very poetic. Often at he's always off playing golf every weekend, and I'm having the Secret Service pay through the nose the pleasure to do it. So I thought, that'll be a fun way to finish off the video. Then the Thelma and Louise ending kind of struck me, and it just all kind of was very organic, really. And we're lucky that golf course is just in my neighborhood. That's Bondi Beach, North Bondi, that golf course. It's a 9-hole public golf course. It's very small, but it's such an insane location and crazy. It's a bit of a historic sort of site. So that was kind of nice to be able to, tie that into it as well.
Right. I have to say, for me personally, when I first saw the cliff, the first thing I thought of was the movie Harold and Maude. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I love Harold and Maude. Yes.
That's my all-time favorite movie. So that at first, that's where I thought you were going with it. But then when I saw the two guys in the golf cart, I'm like, oh no, this is a Thelma Louise moment.
You're ahead of us. Okay. Funnily enough, I forgot about the kiss until right before the shoot. So it was only on the day we turned up and went, I hadn't really discussed it. And I said, we got a kiss. Which of course was probably the most powerful moment in the clip. But the funny thing was that these are Halloween masks, so they had little slits for you to speak through, just so your voice could be heard through this rubber or whatever it is. So for some reason, Putin, which was Nick, our drummer, he decided he was going to stick his tongue out when he was going for the kiss. And I also, behind my mask, for some reason, I puck it up because no one could see my lips. Why? I could have just gone like that, without any sort of. But you're acting, you're just doing. You're in the moment. You just think, well, I'm going to kiss. So that was a wet kiss actually when we did that shot, and I was a little bit taken aback because I wasn't expecting it.
Soraya, we got a little inside scoop here.
That's right, and I got a little inside scoop myself.
So Dave and Nick are even closer than ever before.
Oh boy.
That's right. We didn't do it the next take. We had to do a reverse shot, and of course it didn't happen the second time. But the first time, Nick went a little bit too method acting in his style.
First time was magic. The second time, it's already good.
Oh yeah. No. Maybe I wasn't a good kisser. He didn't bother next time.
Epic. Okay. We have a lot of other questions, but
sure.
But I just want to reiterate: Answered Prayers and Hung Out to Dry. Our listeners need to listen to these. This is wonderful stuff from Hoodoo Gurus. And I've got an odd question. And now I'm thinking about new songs. There's a new album, touring. This kind of hopeful beginning of next year where there can be some shows. I'm curious, what is the crowd reaction? I know the crowd reaction in Australia, but what's the crowd reaction here in the US at your shows? I know Jeff and I love the Gurus, but I want to know from your perspective, what's that crowd reaction here?
Well, it's been a while, but we've always had the same kind of thing right through our career, where it's almost like it's a Hoodoo Gurus audience rather than a particular nationality we're playing to. There are some regional differences in audiences. Like, for example, Brazil, they like the more melodic songs to sing along with. So a song like Good Times from our third album is one they love. And Come Anytime's another song that's really huge in Brazil from the fourth album. But by and large, you know, the songs that work in one area work in the other, and you know, it's just a rock crowd, and we're a rock band. It's not, you know, and it's funny, like when we were really, you know, the beginning of our career, and we actually did a lot of touring in the US early on, and we got quite a lot of success actually. You know, we're headlining quite large theaters and stuff, but you know, a lot of people at the time didn't even realize we were Australian. It was, you know, some people thought we were from the West Coast.
Oh.
You know, because I mean, I'm not sure whether my accent is not that identifiable in the singing, or whether that, you know, they just presumed because they heard us on their local radio station, it must be an American band. But it certainly wasn't something that was like a big part of our marketing, or, you know, like the band from Australia, come and see them. It wasn't ever that. It's just like that band, Hoodoo Gurus, you know, and naturally enough, that's how everyone should be. But so we never sort of felt like, you know, we were different, you know, in a different world. Like it was always just our show with our audience. The only place I'd say really, you know, struck me as being unusual reaction was Germany, because they sort of they were a little bit more intellectual approach, you know, the way they approach rock and roll. They seem to just stand back and almost be stroking their chin, you know, like Sigmund Freud. It's very interesting. We must see what they are doing, you know, and also a little bit in the UK as well. Early on, we felt that the audiences were a little bit inhibited, especially as you got closer to London, and whether that's because they were so concerned about, is this the cool thing to be at, and they kept on looking at each other and making sure it was cool to get into it. You know, it was sort of strange. You know, outside the further away from London you got, the more uninhibited the audiences were, like up north. But as you got closer to London, people seemed to get a little bit more depressed and a little bit more, yeah, it was strange. That was something I noticed early on, but that's about it. You know, generally speaking, it's just a rock show and a rock audience, and, you know, people that know our music know that they're going to have a pretty good time when they come and see us. So they're generally primed for that, which is always great from our point of view.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Well, Dave, our primary focus on our podcast were bands that came out of LA, known as the Paisley Underground, which was primarily a band, the 3 O'Clock, the Rain Parade, Dream Syndicate, and the Bangles.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I wanted to tell you, so my very first concert that I went to by myself, I've gone to several since then, but the very first concert I went to by myself took place on May 18th in 1986 at a place called Montezuma Hall in San Diego State University. And it was Hoodoo Gurus and the Bangles. That's the very first concert I went to by myself.
Wow.
And I went there hoping to get right up front. I got there before any of the bands started, but it's a large hall. It was packed. So I was standing at the back. I tried to get as close as I could to you guys on the stage, but man, you guys were both, it was a great, great show. I remember it very well. Even though it was more than a couple of years.
That was the second tour we did with the Bangles, because we toured with them first in '85 as well.
So we wanted to know, how did that happen? How did this connection?
Yeah, well, what happened was they were on the same booking agency as us, run out of New York, which was FBI. So that's what's his name? Copeland, not Miles's brother. I'm sorry, I should remember his name. It's terrible that I don't. But anyway, because Miles had IRS records and his brother had FBI agency. Okay. So we were on the same agency, and because we'd already toured on the previous album, Stone Age Romeos, but this was when Mars and His Guitars was coming out. We were coming to do our next US tour, and the idea was, well, the Bangles are big in college radio, and so are the Hoodoo Gurus. We'll put them on as a double bill. And in fact, it was a co-headline. We were going to headline one night, they were going to headline the next night. Well, that was all fine and good until shortly before the tour began, the Bangles released a song called Manic Monday. And it was soaring up the charts before the tour began. And it was kind of like, before the tour started, like, okay, I guess we will be opening the show now, because the Bangles have got this huge hit, and everyone, you know, and they might have an audience that doesn't know us at all, you know, but the funny thing was, certainly early in the tour, we were playing venues that, in fact, both bands were equally strong in. So there was almost like a slight favoritism towards us, because even though we were opening, we weren't the band that had sold out and had a hit record, you know, which was silly, because I love the Bangles and I think Manic Monday is fantastic. But you know how people were a little bit snobby about, you know, commercial radio and stuff. So early on, so it was funny that, we were very much, it wasn't like we were just a junior band that, got the, short shrift. I mean, and certainly the two bands got on like a house on the fire. We loved each other and, we were watching each other play and became very close friends. But as the tour progressed, the venue started getting bigger. Manic Monday went to #1. We ended up playing small arenas, and things like that. And the last show was the Greek Theatre in Los Angeles. I mean, what a famous place to be playing, Neil Diamond and all those things. So, it was an extraordinary tour and we had a ball. And we actually had so much fun that the idea was the next year, well, let's do it again. The Bangles asked us to come and play some shows with them. So we did a few weeks with them again in '86, which is where you saw us. But, we actually had a plan for them to support us in Australia, because even though they had hits in Australia, we had hits as well. So we were bigger in Australia. And we thought, well, the Bangles can come out to play with us. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. I guess they got tied up with all the work they were doing elsewhere. But we did a song together. Well, I'd written a song which I thought would be good for both bands to sing together as an encore, all together on stage in the finale. And it was a song called Good Times. So the next album, Blow Your Cool, we still kept that idea in our minds. So we asked the Bangles to sing on it, and they did all the backing vocals in that song. And that began a recording connection between the Bangles and us, or particularly Vicky Peterson, actually. So it's on about 4 hours, I think. I'm not certain exact number, but she sang on 1,000 Miles Away. That's her singing the opening harmony about Now You're Flying. That's Vicky singing there. She also sang on our album Max Shower. She sang on When You Get to California. I'm sure there's something else as well that I'm forgetting right now. And she's singing on our next single.
Oh.
So I told you it's power pop. Well, of course, let's get Vicky on there. That's the first thing I thought of, because there's some vocals that to me just sounded like, wow, Vicky'd be perfect for that.
Wow.
And so, we got Vicky on that. And an exclusive reveal, not only Vicky, her husband, John Cowsill, is also singing on it.
Wow.
So we've got a Cowsill and a Bangle, and he's also a Beach Boy because he's been their drummer for 20 years.
That's right.
So we're pretty chuffed about that. And it's, so that's kind of showing you the angle we're coming from the next song a little bit, just to give you a hint there.
Excellent. Soraya, I had no clue of this. This is exclusive for us.
That is exclusive, totally. Yeah.
And we know, in addition to the songs that you mentioned, that she did a couple songs with you on Crank. She did You Open My Eyes and Hypocrite Blues, I believe she sang.
Oh, right. There we go. Yeah, I knew there was something. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and, Vicky is a very good friend. I mean, obviously, we still love the Bangles. I mean, the Bangles played in Australia a while back, and they invited Brad and I to get up and in Sydney to jam with them on a song. We ended up playing Pushing Too Hard, the Seeds song, which is, I think they use that as a traditional kind of get up people up song because it's pretty simple and everyone can play it. And that was fun, so this, I mean, yeah, I love the Bangles, right through. I mean, yeah, I can't fault them personally.
Amazing. Can you imagine, Jeff, that version of Pushing Too Hard, the Bangles and Hoodoo Guru?
That's one of your favorite. You've played that song several times on the show, Soraya. So
now I'm going to go down a deep dive on YouTube. Someone has it posted.
Now, you actually, by the way, because of that, Bangles doing that with us, we've done it a couple of times since then with other people. We had Little Steven do it with us at the zoo in Melbourne. Wow. He was on tour with Bruce Springsteen at the time in Australia. So I'm not sure if that's on YouTube, but will probably see on YouTube us playing in Madrid last year, where we had Keith Strength from the Flesh Tones and Don Mariani from the Stems. up. So, yeah, because they were both, Keith was, he came down to visit while we were touring because he was actually in France at the time. So and we're old friends. So he just came down and actually got up with us for several shows and played the encore. And we played some of his songs and he joined us on some of ours. But Don Mariani was also in Madrid because there was a festival on that they were playing at a couple of days later. So he just came to the club and we all just got up and did that.
Wow. So Flesh Tones is something we want to get to in a little bit. But before moving away from the connections from the Paisley Underground, we know that Steve Wynn and Mark Walton from the Dream Syndicate sang on In the Middle of the Land from Blow Your Cool also. How did that connection come about?
Well, we were on the label we were on at that time, which is now our label because we sued them and ended up buying them off the bankrupted label off the liquidators later because the money was all pulled out. We won the case, but they took all the assets away. But we ended up buying our freedom and getting all our, copyrights back and all that. But yeah, they were on the same label in Australia called Big Time Records. And so that was how we all met up. And in fact, at the same time, we also had Violent Femmes on the same label as well. So I think that they had the Slash catalog, was one of the reasons at the time. So that was just, I think that they were touring Australia at the time and just made sense, like we all like each other, and let's, we're doing some recording, come on down, sing on this song. It's what you do. And of course, we've had reconnected with Steve in recent years. We did a thing in Australia called Dig It Up some years ago, probably about 10 years ago, where we basically had our own little mini festival. We headlined and we played we did it 2 years in a row. The first year we played the whole of Stone Age Romeos, and the second year we played the whole of Marcy's Guitars as a set. But we had on the bill all these other bands that we loved. So we had, one year was Blue Oyster Cult, the Buzzcocks and Flamin' Groovies, and the first year we had the Sonics and the Dream Syndicate and the Flesh Tones and Red Cross. It was a really amazing thing. So it was a festival and like several stages and venues, and it was like, it was an all day thing. It was wonderful.
Wow.
So having Steve and Linda out for that was wonderful. It wasn't the Dream Syndicate; it was just Steve solo, but it was fantastic.
That's awesome. We love the connections.
Amazing, because you also mentioned for Dig It Up, Red Cross, but we also know that there's been a connection too between the Gurus and the Muffs.
Yes, indeed. Well, we toured with Red Cross and the Muffs in Spain. Again, probably about 8 years ago, maybe. It's very sad about Kim passing away. But we were on the bus and had a fantastic time. Wonderful band, and Red Cross are old friends. We had Red Cross support us when we did Crank in Australia. We flew them out to tour with us then. That was the first time they'd been to Australia, and we are huge fans of theirs.
That's a dream gig for me right there.
Right?
Muffs and Red Cross and us. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah,
it was great. And in Spain as well. That even makes it better.
yeah. Exactly. So, do you have any memories of touring specifically with Kim and how she was to hang around with?
No, only on the fact that they were just absolutely wonderful people, just lovely. And, we were past the stage of being, writing in the bus sort of thing, getting wildly drunk and all those sorts of things. We're much more, sensible people at this point in our lives. But it was just gorgeous, just really nice people and great music. Obviously, that's the first thing that you really get off on is just their music and who they are, as creators. And then to see them as nice people as well is just a bonus. And no, that's all I could say. Really, it was too short an experience. I'll say that. It was only a couple of weeks, but it was wonderful memories to have.
Excellent. So Ronnie Barnett, the bass player for the Muffs, is a mentor for us. He's been on the show several times, and we actually had a call with him last week when we found out that we were going to have the opportunity to talk to you, and we knew that he had spent some time with you. Soraya and I gave Ronnie a call, and we're like, Ronnie, we're going to talk to Dave Faulkner of Hoodoo Gurus, and he's like, first thing I want to tell you, he's the greatest guy you'll ever know. Just relax. I know you guys are super excited. A good guy. Am I right, Soraya?
Absolutely.
Well, he's a magician. That's the other thing about him. That's great.
Yeah.
And he got us into the Magic Castle because you have to know someone that's, a proper musician to do it. And he's a member of that Magic Castle. So that was wonderful.
So I wanted to ask, are you a big Magic fan? Because that's a really special place.
It is. I love the Magic Castle. I actually first went there before we met Ronnie a long time ago. A friend of mine worked in school performance tours over in Australia. She booked different acts to go and entertain kids, to give them a theatrical experience or something to kind of, break up their mundane school lives. They have this little entertainment thing that goes through. And she, through that job, she met this wonderful old magician who, and I'm sorry I don't remember his name, but he's a very old and a famous magician. In fact, he invented the sawing a woman in half with a circular saw act.
Wow.
So he's the one that he is like what considered to be one of the legends of magic, you know, like sort of up there with Houdini and Carter, you know. But he's Australian, and you know, but he obviously did a lot of performing in America as well. And you know, we're talking about the early 20th century now, obviously. And he was still alive. He was quite an old man, but you know, he'd done some shows for her. I'm talking about now the late 80s, early 90s, like probably 89 or 90. And yes, so he got us an invite to the Magic Castle, got us in the door, so to speak. And that was my first time there, and it was mind blowing.
Wow.
And then Ronnie, of course, got us in the next time. So, yes, I love magic. If I go to Vegas, I have no interest in playing the slots or anything like that. But if there's any magic on there, I make sure I go see that. And there was one time I went where I was really, in fact, with the same friend, and because she loves magic as well. And we went to like a very down market casino. Basically, every sort of drive-in motel there has a casino. Really, it's just like, you know, a showroom, which is, you know, and there was this magic show on there, and what it was a whole collection of different magicians from around the world, and they'd somehow tried to organize themselves to create a show at which they wanted to present to the powers that be in Vegas to show them, you know, a show they could put on in a bigger room. And so they're putting it on there as a sort of, and the thing that blew my mind is the first time I'd ever seen a Frick in real life, because I'm a big fan of Todd Browning's Fricks. You know, anyone that likes the Ramones' first album second album, knows that song, We're a Happy Family, Gabba Gabba, we accept you, one of us, and that famous scene with all the freaks in it, in that movie. Well, there was one of those freaks that you know, there's a guy in that movie that has basically nothing below his torso. He's just a pair of, the person in this magic show was the same kind of, I shouldn't say freak. I mean, you know, this person had that strange deformity where they obviously had some kind of, you know, shrunken lower half or something, you know, vestigial legs maybe, but you couldn't see anything. It's literally like they just stopped at the waist as a posse. And so he was wearing, black tie, so bow tie and a, you know, coat. And so they did some sort of switcheroo with an able-bodied person and this person, and they did the chopping in half act, except he was the one that was left after the chop in half. And then he started running around the room going from table to table just on his hands. Wow. With no body. Wow. And people were screaming and running for the exit because it was so frightening to them, because this wasn't a digital effect on television. This was real. Wow. And how could this exist? Wow. And it blew my mind. I was so excited to see that, to see a real evocation of that movie from the 1930s on real life. Wow. Sorry, that's my magic story. But I love magic. You know, close-up magic's my favorite. That's my favorite. I had a big birthday party when I turned 40, and I had magicians there, and had a close-up magician there as well. Wow. That's my favorite thing.
Very cool. Well, Soraya, we're learning a little bit more about Dave Faulkner here.
Well, I want to, you know, it seems like an unnatural transition, but I have to ask. Okay, so now we know about the magic, and I'm super excited about that. And that show in Vegas sounds absolutely like bone chilling to see someone running around after being sawn
in half.
You know, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask something, because I thought it was so interesting that you talked about kind of where things are moving currently for the gurus and a power pop sound. But I want to talk about the victims.
Ah, yes.
And I want to talk about how does the victims get started with Dave Faulkner in it? How does this genesis happen?
Well, firstly, we obviously, I grew up listening to, you know, pop music in the 60s. Because as I say, I was born in 1957, late 1957. So 60s, you know, my brother was 8 years older than I, and he'd bring home those cool singles, you know, Stones, Satisfaction. I remember, you know, when he brought that home, the first time I ever heard that song, you know, so it was a brand new song for me one day, you know, it wasn't like an old chestnut like it is for everyone else. And that was exciting. Then, you know, as I got older, you know, and I got discovered my own sort of tastes in music, and, you know, you can become a teenager and you and for me, the music was glam rock and heavy rock. So, you step Black Sabbath and Deep Purple and also Susie Quattro and T-Rex and stuff like that. And we didn't sort of really discriminate. It was all just rock and roll to us. We didn't sort of like say that's, those two don't belong with each other, but they were quite different really. So when punk rock came along, I was just, turning 17 probably. And then, about to turn 18. And we were reading about the scene in New York in end of 1975. CBGBs, and there's this band called the Ramones, and how they played buzzsaw guitars. And it all sounded very exciting, but we couldn't hear it. We could only read about it. This is in the music papers from the UK, which is what we used to read, because there was no internet in those days. So you go to the cool record stores and buy these cool music newspapers and hear about what was happening in music elsewhere in the world. And you'd order the records in. It'd take 6 to 8 weeks to come in on the ship, from UK or the US. So that was how we, followed our passion for music, and reading about this band, the Ramones, sounded really exciting, and the CBGBs. And then this album came out in '76, early '76, called Live at CBGBs. It was a double album, and it wasn't really didn't sound like the music that they were describing. The Ramones weren't on it. Talking Heads weren't on it. None of the bands, Blondie. But, it had bands like the Shirts, and it had Robert Gordon's band, the Tough Darts, and things like that. So we kind of like going, well, it sounds cool, but is this punk rock? We didn't know, and it wasn't until the Ramones album came out at the end of '76 that we really kind of, got to hear what we'd been reading about. And that was kind of like, at first to me, it was kind of shocking because it was all that aggressive sort of guitar sound, but the melodies were so poppy and the lyrics were so fun. It's kind of like that cartoon lyric, and it wasn't violent at all. Really, beat on the bat with the baseball bat was funny more than threatening.
Yeah.
So I was kind of expecting something more violent, I think, was the way it was being written about. So it wasn't until I heard the Sex Pistols I kind of think, oh, that's sort of what I was expecting, really. This kind of aggro angriness, and the Ramones was so, but of course, after about 2 or 3 listens, I completely, got the Ramones. As I say, I was a bit taken aback by the way they're so much like the Beach Boys, and the melodies. But of course, that's perfect. That's actually even better that they are like that. Not, it wasn't a fault. It was just that I wasn't quite, I was taken aback. So the Ramones are still my favorite of all that era, and worship them to this day. But we sort of formed our own little group, and I played keyboards in those days. I wasn't a guitarist yet. So I rehearsed a few times. There was a band called the Cheap Nasties, and that was in 1976. And then I quit, actually, because it's a long story, so I won't bother going. But the quick version is we played the Ramones album at a party full of these sort of what we call trendy people. I guess you'd say yuppies now or whatever. And they, pot smoking, kind of theatrical types. And we thought they'd hate the Ramones because, it's so in your face, and they were playing the Rocky Horror Show was their favorite album. So we thought they'll hate this, but instead they liked it. So I was I was a bit drunk. I said, well, I quit, the Ramones. And if these people don't like this music, then I don't, I don't want to play it, it was, because I was full of the passion of, we're going to change the world with this music. And then seeing these people suddenly embracing it kind of shattered me. Anyway, I quit, and I ended up joining a blues group for a while. But at the same time, after I sobered up, I decided to teach myself guitar because I wanted to be in a punk rock band. So that's what I spent the next 8 months doing, was learning guitar, teaching myself guitar, and then as it happened, the Cheap Nasties finally got a real gig, and that was in '77, and it's advertised as a punk rock show, which there'd never been anything like that in Perth before, where we grew up in Western Australia. And so anyone that liked this music from anywhere in the city suddenly went, well, there's punk rock on. We've got to go see this, whatever it is. Is it good or bad? We'll just sort of see what it is. And they went along, and, that's where I met James Baker. And that very night he said, let's form a group. And that's became the Victims. And, we became one of the probably more famous bands out of Perth in that era. And that was sort of how that happened. And so the Victims ended up, playing a bunch of shows and recording a single and an EP. And it probably lasted maybe about 10 months, I guess. And then, long story, I got a job to try and save money because I wanted to travel to see all the bands that I hadn't had a chance to see. So in 1979, I was 21. I hadn't turned 22 yet, and I went to the UK and then went to the US. So I spent nearly 8 months in the US in 1979, and most of that time in New York City. And I saw the Cramps and saw the Flesh Tones, and I saw the B-52s, and saw Talking Heads doing Theatre of Music at an unannounced show at Irving Plaza. And I mean, it was just, seeing all these, the DBs, the Xanties, all these amazing bands, that was such a fertile time. And that really cemented everything I'd already been thinking about music. But it opened, punk was kind of like, I thought of it like a crucible. It kind of purified music down to its essence. And then I was ready to completely explode outwards into new influences and to, in a way, abandon all that blinkered attitude of punk, which is, you must be like this, and, almost like being in the army, whereas, it's a very rigid kind of, set of rules almost. It felt like that by the end, instead of, being uninhibited and just doing what you like. And so, and then I was listening to music I hadn't really heard before, such as rockabilly and things like that. I'd never been open to that, and so I was opening up my ears to all this different music, the New Orleans stuff, Professor Longhair, things like that. So it was a complete, for me, it was my psychedelic revolution, if you like. The Summer of Love for me was 1979.
That's amazing.
Wow, that is incredible. So what a way to get started in music, right? So I appreciate that you've taken time to go all the way back to the very, very early days of young Dave Faulkner. And again, for our listeners, and the new song, Hung Out to Dry, is amazing. If you guys haven't heard it, I know a lot of our listeners have, because we sent out a pre-notice that we were going to talk to you, and everybody flipped out. They're so excited. One guy said he just got through listening to a stack of Hoodoo Gurus records. He said right when he saw our post that announced that you were coming on.
So it was meant to be.
It was meant to be. So
well, please, I do urge people, please spread that video around. I'd love it to actually get to that, Donald Trump's office. I'd love him to see it and to get insulted, because I put something special in there just for him. There's a card where I put up, I'm singing the lyric. I'm saying, glue your hair down one last time. And so I hold up the card saying, bad hair day every day, which if he sees that, he will hate me. And there's also another line in there as well. Hasta luego, cabron. And that's for our Mexican friends. And I even have the Mexican flag colors through the writing, because, it's horrible what how he's been abusing Mexico all these years. And so I thought, let's give him a bit of a Mexican return of fire serve.
I love that. It's so punk rock.
See, you can never get rid of the punk rock. Oh my gosh. So just a quick check-in. So for our listeners, the video is on YouTube, definitely available. But is there another place where people can get up-to-date information about the Gurus? Webpage, social media, anything?
Yeah, sadly, well, we do have an Instagram. I mean, that's more, I run both these pages. The Hoodoo Gurus Facebook page, Hoodoo Gurus Official, Instagram, Hoodoo Gurus _official. And that's more, I just, put up old band photos and just weird things, and even things that influenced us, it's kind of more, in a sense, like gossipy inside, just like, and the Facebook page is kind of more official in the sense it'll, tell you what new release. I do put official news in another one as well, but it's more about, I don't know what's going on and, gigs and stuff like that. So the two together are good, but they're not quite the same thing. We don't do any tweeting. Whenever I post on Facebook, there is a tweet that goes out of the first however many characters, but I don't actually write it as a tweet. So that's Faulkner69 as my Twitter handle, but I never actually tweet anything personally. Only when I post on Facebook, it just goes out as a tweet at first.
Perfect.
And that's about it. So yes, and of course we're on all the streaming platforms these days. If there's oversights where some albums aren't there, we're trying to fix it up, but it's hard for us to exactly know who's got what at this point, because we're only stuck in Australia and not going anywhere right now, but we hope to change that.
Very good. Well, we
Yeah.
really appreciate you taking time, Dave, to talk to us, and we're really excited about what's in the future for Hoodoo Gurus. And
Thank you. And look out for Vicky and John on our next single.
yeah, yeah,
This is going to be fantastic.
It
Again,
was good.
Hung Out to Dry, Answered Prayers album, hopefully coming soon, and tours. Look out for that tour. But David Faulkner, thank you so, so much for coming on and for sharing with our listeners today. I mean, smile is not going to leave my face for a while.
Cheers. Thank you so much for having me, and enjoy the rest of your Friday. And I'll look forward to it. Saturday's looking good too, I'm telling you. You'll get there soon.
Thank you for the forecast.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Hey, what did you think about that, Soraya?
That is one cool cat. That is one cool dude.
Yeah.
Really interesting to see, you know, you and I have talked about it a lot, especially with these Paisley Underground bands, this really encouraging and supportive community that they formed, you know, with one another. And, you know, yeah, people can tell, oh, you know, you guys focus on this really kind of niche moment in time. But I find it so interesting, the bridges and the connections and, you know, of how they're supportive. And look at it. I mean, you know, what, 2020 or 2021, he's got this, you know, there's this new album and Vicky Peterson and John Cowsill are on it. You know, it's just really cool to see, or like to see how much of a music fan he is. And to know, like when he was talking about Dig It Up, the festival, and he goes, we only had bands that we loved. You know,
cool. Yeah.
oh, they're cool. Like,
Yeah.
and you know, Steve Wynn is, you know, Muffs and Red Cross. What?
Yes.
You know, I found that amazing. You know, it really spans this musical panorama. What a cool guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love the connections. It's so cool, and the excitement that he has to still be working with some of these people after so long, and the excitement that he has for making and releasing music.
You know, it's just so encouraging, and at a time like the one that we're living in, that to hear that excitement about new projects and wanting to get back into the studio and get, you know, things moving, it's encouraging. You know, we miss being at live shows as a fan, and, you know, to hear him say, we're ready, we want to get back in, we've got, you know, and material is coming, and we've got things brewing. I love hearing that.
Yes,
It's just, it's something to look forward to and something to just hold on to, you know. And but I love the fact that he goes, you know, well, you know, not so much a rock album now, it's power pop. And I'm all, okay, I don't know if I'd ever, if I have used the words Hoodoo Gurus and power pop together, but I like that evolution.
Mm-hmm.
You know, different things inspire different moments in time for the band. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
I can't wait to hear it.
they're willing to listen. And I loved how he talked about that once he heard punk music, like he said, okay, brought everything down to like its essence. And then I was ready to just like blow it up.
Yep.
Loved that. And I'm like, that's a cool dude.
Yep, yeah. And you can hear it in the music too. You can hear that it's an evolution from punk, hence post-punk or college rock or what have you. So
I mean, that's just pretty dang cool. Pretty dang cool.
yeah, absolutely. That was a fun discussion.
Whew. You know, I'm really, really glad that we got a chance to talk to him.
Same, yeah.
Yeah.
Great dude.
A smile on my face.
Yep, and Ronnie wasn't wrong.
Oh no, Ronnie was 100% correct.
Yes, absolutely.
Woo! Jeff.
All right. Well, I think we should call it for a day and get ready to go spread that video a little bit. Maybe we can get it to the right person, the intended the intended person.
All right. Well, then let's get to Sharon and gente. Hallelujah.
Groove on, Paisley people.
Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. Oi, oi, oi.